Well, the limits to our knowledge are emphasized by Hayek, and yet Keynes is probably most, renowned for the vision that he created that contradicted classical economics, took it on, said its assumptions were false in the 1930s. So
yes,
in one case you have a man who's saying, we know much less than you think. Another saying, orthodox dogma called science really doesn't fill the bill, and there's another vision here that's much closer to the reality we experience.
Keynes took classical economics, or market economics, in its simplest form, which you can read in the first chapter of any economics textbook. And it just tells you supply, demand, and so on. And he described it. He explored it as a scientist might explore space or an intangible subject like psychology. And he effectively invented the science of economics that we know today. Before Keynes, there was no macroeconomics. It was all microeconomics, but it wasn't called microeconomics. Because macroeconomics said you should look at the whole system and how it works with each other, all of the different moving parts, you then started having to measure the moving parts to see what happens if you moved one part, how it would affect another part. And that's how we came to econometrics, something which, of course, Keynes was immensely bored by. He was interested in broad brush stuff, big stuff, and he really was not interested in what today all graduates of economics have become, which are people who have an intensely mathematical understanding of the science, which they believe it's a science, that they're pursuing.
You know, many say the current PhD program is a PhD in modeling technique rather than a PhD in economics.
I mean, it is astounding to me that you can meet a doctor of economics and actually they have no understanding and have never read any Keynes at all.
The other thing that he did, which I think is very important as distinct from Newtonian physics, and I'll cite, there was a letter to Roy Harrod that he wrote, I believe in 1938, where he said that what makes a good economist is one who can create a model but can distinguish between those things which are constants and those things which are variable. And then went on to say that an even more scarce characteristic of a great economist is astute observation. And an astute observer is the one who chooses the right model, doesn't just provide what you might call imaginary visions, but actually can select among those visions. And he thought that was a more scarce talent. I don't think we employ the second talent, particularly in the academic world today.
I'm afraid that wisdom and judgment are very scarce in any discipline. And of course, one of the things was that, and it was the very final conversation between Keynes and Hayek, when Hayek said, you know, your Keynesian people are saying all sorts of things which I'm sure you don't really believe. And if they start applying these things are going to go terribly wrong. And Keynes reassured him, don't worry, if they do that, I'll step in. Well, of course, he was gone and wasn't able to step in. But the great period, the great age of Keynes, really, 45 to 75, I suppose, when stagflation hit, we enjoyed prosperity unrivaled in the Western world as a result of Keynesian politics applied by politicians who were professed Keynesians. On the other hand, there's no doubt that they also misapplied it because they were always prepared to borrow in order to fill in the bottom of a business cycle, but they were much more reluctant to pay off the debt at the top of the cycle, which is what Keynes said. And of course, the other thing is that the business cycle fell out of sync with the electoral cycle. And so whenever a president or a prime minister wanted to be re-elected, it was much easier to keep your foot on the gas and just get over the little bump until you were re-elected, with the promise that you would do the right thing afterwards.